Hey everyone, I'm Jordy, and this is your guide to both the normal and hard mode encounter of the Titanic Watcher, Freya. Now, Freya patrols around the Conservatory of Life, a lush oasis nestled amongst the machines and temple within the facility of Ulduar. Around her, 3 elders stand guard that, if you choose to not kill, will lend Freya their abilities during her fight, similar to the Drakes on Sartharion. Now, Freya is an adds-focused 2-phase fight, but unlike most encounters, Phase 1 is where you'll really spend most of your time, as Phase 2 is kind of an easy win should you make it there. Freya will spawn 3 unique groups of adds over the course of the encounter, twice each for a total of 6 waves. Freya herself has a large stack of a buff that increases her healing taken and a persistent hot that makes it nearly impossible to just burn her down. However, as each add wave dies, stacks of her healing buff begin to fall off until you finish all 6 and can then turn your attention to her and finish her off. As far as raid composition, we bring 2 tanks, 5 healers, and a mix of ranged and melee DPS. It's important to plan ahead and make sure that you have a few classes capable of knocking back large groups of enemies. Fire mages with an unglyphed blast wave, balanced druids, and elemental shamans are great for this. Alright, so I'm going to go over what Freya herself does, then get into each of the waves of adds and how to deal with them. Freya deals moderate damage and isn't too much of a threat herself. Periodically, she'll summon a quickly growing tree somewhere in the room named Aonar's Gift that must be quickly killed before it reaches full size. Once it does, it will heal everything in the room a significant amount. These trees are 100% priority and need to be DPS'd quickly. Additionally, she'll randomly cast Sunbeam on someone, which deals about 13,000 damage to the target and anyone in close range of them. Now, these aren't to be confused with the sunbeams that she casts at targeted areas on the ground for hard mode. The name is the same, which is annoying, but they're separate spells. Now, in hard mode, Freya has a few more abilities, infused by the 3 elders you chose to leave up in the room. But before we get to that, let's see what kind of buffs she and her summon adds get from these elders. In totality, both Freya and her allies of nature receive a 50% damage buff, both physical and magical. This applies to her new abilities also. The first, Ground Tremor. About a minute into the fight and about every minute thereafter, plus or minus some seconds, she'll deal about 15,000 zone-wide physical damage and silence anyone casting for 10 seconds. This can really hurt, so you want to be sure your raid is topped off as much as possible when this goes out. Paladins can dissect this, which helps with a lot of the damage and should plan their rotation out ahead of time. She also will cast Sunbeam every so often. A few rays of light will appear on the ground that, if you stand in them for too long, will take about 12,500 damage every 1.5 seconds. It's imperative you pay attention and avoid standing in these. The incoming damage cannot be afforded. Finally, she'll cast Iron Roots. These are identical to Entangling Roots, except they're actually mobs that will root you in place that must be damaged and killed before they will release you. They also deal about 8,000 damage every 2 seconds to anyone rooted. These cannot be Blessing of Freedom or fapped. Complicating this is Sunbeam, as you can get rooted in a Sunbeam, which can kill you very quickly, so freeing your allies or yourself while rooted should be top priority. Alright, that's all that Freya herself does. Note that on normal mode, she only does Aonar's Gift, so if you're just working on normal Freya, ignore those last 3 mechanics. Alright, now on to the adds of the fight. Okay, so on pull, you'll attempt to fight Freya in the central plane of the area, with enough room on all sides to deal with whatever adds might come and not get too close to any of the walls that might block your movement. Note that she starts the fight with a massive healing buff, so DPS on her is literally useless. Just let the tank start threading and wait for the first wave of adds. Now, 10 seconds into the fight, the first wave of adds will spawn. It can be any one of 3 sets, so we'll start with 1 at random and proceed from there. First, let's talk about the Ancient Conservator. This large tree isn't too dangerous himself. It's what appears around him that can get tricky. A large group of mushrooms will begin sprouting as soon as he spawns. You should quickly try to get near one, as it provides a 25% damage buff and will also prevent you from getting silenced by the persistent silencing aura that the Ancient Conservator applies to everyone in the raid. Do your best to spread out and not stack too many under one mushroom, as sunbeams are still going out and having too many be targeted by one can really grief your healers. Additionally, every so often, someone will get targeted with a debuff called Nature's Fury. They're infused with lightning and will take large damage over time, while also dealing that same damage to anyone within range of them. If you're targeted, you need to run away from everyone that might be under the same mushroom as you and hope for heals. Don't go too far from your healers in a panic, just far enough not to spread the damage while doing what you can to continue your job. Once the Ancient Conservator goes down, any mushrooms still growing will continue to until they eventually die, so feel free to use that damage buff on whatever next wave of adds comes. Alright, next up, let's talk Detonating Lashers. 10 Detonating Lashers will spawn up and around Freya, each with about 400,000 HP. They have no aggro table, so they'll chase around people unless your raid is stacked up under Freya. What makes them deadly is that when they're killed, they'll explode and deal nearly lethal damage to anyone within range. They are, however, stunnable and rootable, so our only goal is to get them all low as a group, call for a series of knockbacks and stuns and roots, and then kill them all at range from the raid before they can get the opportunity to run back into the group. I'm going to let our raid leader Baron take over these calls as he does it very well, so you can see how it's done and the timing on it.
Only multi-target attacks. Knock away 1. Knock away 2. Get away. Get away. Use go Moonkin go. Moonkin go. Shadow Fury. Yeah.
Don't cheat.
Perfection.
Tree.
So yeah, knockback, stun, root, trap, whatever. Just don't let them near you as they die and GG. Okay. The only wave we haven't covered is the trio of elementals. We'll cover what each one does really quick. First, the Snap Lasher. This is a large green lasher mob, and it's quite dangerous unless handled very specifically. As it gets hit by your melee DPS, it will stack up a debuff that increases its damage by 10%, which can stack super high to the point where it will one-shot your tank. To avoid this, you should have a DK Frost Presence tank it from range with Chains of Ice and Taunt or Icy Touch spam. This should allow your range DPS to focus on it without much fear of your tanks or melee getting one shot. There are other ways to do this, this is just one. Next up in this wave, the Ancient Water Spirit. This guy's not too bad, just have your off tank grab him and attempt to face him away from your raid. He'll do a big crashing wave spell that will knock back anyone in a cone in front of him, so just do your best to avoid anyone getting hit. Finally, the Storm Lasher. This guy should be picked up by your Ancient Water Spirit tank, and your physical DPS should keep a good eye on it. Any stuns are hugely helpful here, as it casts quickly and each ability does do a lot of damage. Lightning Lash can't be interrupted, but Storm Bolt can, so make sure you kick it when possible. Also, spread out in this phase, as the Lightning Lash can bounce up to 5 times and really truck toward the end of the chain, so do your best to avoid spreading it all that much. Now these 3 adds all have to die around the same time, so be vocal about what percent each is, and when they're all sub 10%, call for the kill and send it. If one does die too soon, you'll see it revive and have to kill it all over again. Once you've finished the first 3 waves of adds, you just have to do 3 more waves of each type of add again. The order of these appearing is random, but you'll see one of each wave before they repeat, and you won't see the same thing in wave 3 and 4, even though you've seen them all once. We choose to lust on the second Ancient Conservator. He's quite beefy, so the extra damage is nice, and the healers are stressed pretty good by this point, so shortening the phase helps a lot. Once 6 waves are dead, you can turn your attention to Freya. She has all of her normal abilities and all the things that she adds in hard mode if you chose to do that, but she'll also begin throwing green pods on the ground called Nature Bombs. These will get placed on a player and over time will grow before blossoming into an explosion that deals nature damage to anyone standing nearby. It's actually pretty simple. Just have the ranged melee stand in 2 groups on one side of the river, and once the bombs go out, just move across the river and continue doing what you were doing. Watch out for ground tremor, sunbeams, iron roots, nature bombs, and just keep blasting Freya until she finally relents. One thing to keep in mind is that Freya still has a 24,000 HPS hot in this phase, so it's extremely important to keep a mortal wound of some type up on the boss. Mortal strike or wound poisoning, aim shot, whatever. Alright, let's talk about some tank tips. Freya is a very mobile fight that will require you to be aware of where the raid is at all times, especially on the Ancient Conservator wave, as the mushrooms tend to separate the group. Just be cognizant of where your healers are and do your best to be in range. Be very careful when the trio of adds spawn. The Snap Lasher can hit really hard once the stacks are applied and will one-shot you, so don't let it get too close to you as it's being kited around. For healers, this is one of the most fun fights in Ulduar to heal on. There's a ton of random and consistent damage going out, and every healer gets to shine here in different ways. Paladins, make sure you're planning out your D-stacks for those ground tremors. Cutting some of that damage will save lives if someone isn't topped up. You should also be aware of the ground tremor when it goes out and do your best to avoid casting in that moment, as it can lock you out for a long time and really impede your ability to heal. And for DPS, this fight is all about what your DPS priorities are. First, over anything, the A&R gift trees that will spawn around the room. Make sure to call for it to be DPS'd when it spawns and be clear of where it is. Second, the Iron Roots. They will kill someone if you don't get them free fast enough, because positioning is key on this fight. Finally, the adds. Make sure you're DPSing the right ones. Steady equal DPS on the trio of adds, AoE DPS on the detonating lashers, as none can die early or before you're ready to move out, and full send on the Ancient Conservator. Alright, well that's it for Freya. This is one of my favorite fights in Ulduar, and I can't wait to tackle her every week. If you have any questions or advice for your fellow raiders, hit me up in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help me grow the channel and keep making this kind of stuff. Alright, that's it for me. See you in Ulduar.